Welcome everybody to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we are blessed to have Mr. Sean Callagy from Unblinded, a gentleman whose story really hit me in the feels. I have to say, he has a great story, great insights about not only business, but he's also someone who's known as the blind warrior adventurer, who going out there really just taking life by its horns and growing and improving himself every single day, all whilst being told that he is legally blind as well. So if you're someone who's had fears, frustrations, problems, issues through your life, you need to listen to this episode because it really puts everything into consideration. It really puts everything into the view of, hey, if you've got two seeing eyes and you're watching this episode, you really can't complain. And I really want to share that with you. He's worked with the likes of Tony Robbins, been on stage with him. We talk about the future of experiential marketing as well. And of course, if we can ever help you with your marketing, if you want some tools, templates, strategies, head over to marketingmogul.com.au. We've got you covered. But until then, let's jump into the show. Sean, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. Really appreciate you making the time.
Kim, really appreciate being here and looking forward to it. And thanks everybody for listening.
It's great to have you here. Now, I always like to start our podcast off with the same question every time, which is, if I met you out at a party or something like that and we crossed paths and I said, Sean, what is it that you actually do? What's your go-to answer?
My simple answer would be, this may sound a little odd, Kim. I'm in the business of co-creating simple, fun, and magical micro distinctions and frictionlessness that free exponential abundance in people's money, time, and magic, meaning small input, large output, money, time, and magic in a formula.
I love that. Tell us a little bit more about that, because that's pretty intriguing when you say that like that. It definitely tickles people's fancies, I can imagine.
Yeah. So 23 years ago, I had my dream job in law school, knowing I was going blind. I had been a Division I college baseball athlete in the U.S., hoping to go on and play professionally, and it was on track to do that. But I have a hereditary degenerative eye disease that started to affect me. And so that ended law school because I really didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I was there. I got my quote unquote dream job, which really wasn't, because I didn't see anybody there that I thought had a life that I wanted to lead. And so from there, I simply started to research and step into the world of personal development and realized that with no contacts, no money, $100,000 in debt, that I wanted to run an experiment about whether or not I could build my own law firm, which for those that are, unclear, the legal business is a business like any other, and couldn't believe the results. And I built a 40-person law firm in 2 years. I've never heard of somebody doing that before or since, especially with no contacts and no resources. And that wasn't about me. It was about realizing what was possible for people. And my desire, after selling my first law firm 4 years later, became to teach others to do the same. So that's what I do. I do a 125-person law firm today. I built the second one, but I also own a company named Unblinded, which teaches people about the superpower of influence and what we can do with it to create the money, time, and magic that we want.
I love that. That's amazing. I want to circle back to the beginning of that story where you mentioned you got into personal development. I'm always curious as to what people's first foray is, because there's so many. I always, there's kind of like the founding fathers of personal development. But what was it for you? What was the first interaction with the personal development world?
Yeah, so I bifurcate that into three parts. First, when I was 11, I had a buddy in my class that was doing like push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and jogging. We're 11. And that to me was my first view into personal development. It was somebody who was actually doing things differently than the rest of us and creating accelerated results. So I was like, number one. Number two, when I was 16, I had the good fortune of somebody coming in and doing imagery and visualization courses that I paid $10 for. And I just did what this fine gentleman told me, and the results were incredible in athletics. And then when I was 27, and what you're referring to, Kim, in the more traditional world of personal development, when I was going to quit my job at this law firm, I wasn't sure what to do next. At 6 months out of law school, a gentleman that I loved and cared about very much, great mentor of mine, my chiropractor, said, hey, read this book. It's called Awaken the Giant Within, by this guy, Tony Robbins. So for me, it started with Tony Robbins, that led to Jay Abraham, that led to a book called, actually didn't lead to, but a separate book called How to Make a Fortune from Public Speaking. I bought for $1 at a garage sale. read Jerry Spence, and that of course led into Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, Og Mandino, and some other fine folks like that. But Tony Robbins was the core foundational component for me.
I love that. It was very similar to myself. My dad handed me a bunch of CDs that he bought from, I don't know where. And there was only the first two were unopened. And I think it was like Personal Power or one of those Tony Robbins programs. And I got through the first two discs and I opened disc 3 and he said, congratulations. If you're on disc 3, you're one of probably 100 people because the other 99 didn't get past the first two discs. And I had to laugh because my dad only made it through the first two discs and he handed it over to me. So he was one short on that side of things. But so tell me, like, what was some of the learnings that you took? Obviously, when you said then you grew your first law firm, which you then sold. For people that are going through a journey of growing one of their first businesses at the moment, what were some of the lessons that you learned along the way to get you to the point where it became a saleable asset for you as well?
Yeah. So Kim, what I learned for the combination of Tony's work and Jay's work, and I had the unique privilege of having spent a lot of time with both of them more directly and personally in the last couple of years, which has been an amazing honor to meet people who change your life and spend real time with them. What I learned in the beginning was that there were major challenges and flaws in the space of personal development. And I wanted to create a formula because I'd walk into a bookstore and after beginning to read Tony, he said, read more books and model. And I'd go out and it's like just a wall full of books. So the first thing that I became really certain about was I needed a container for information. So it wasn't just a tip and a tip and a tip and a tip and a tip, but like all disconnected. So I built a structure and a formula. And in a nutshell, that formula allowed me to create the acceleration. And I learned about the exponentiality of marketing, the power of public speaking. And so instead of seeking referrals, I sought to add value to groups. And by adding value to groups, this led to folks being curious and interested in what I was doing. And that led to sales meetings and sales. So in a nutshell, it's unlocking the superpower of influence and knowing how to present that in a value added, integrous group dynamic, and then structure appropriate calls to action for sales meetings. And that model was unbelievably, it was perfectly effective. Yeah. So that was the beginning.
And so you were using that model as well for building the law firm as well as then the company where you're teaching these formulas now as well?
Yeah. For building everything. Same formula worked for building the most successful coaching business that I had out of my coaching school. I think so many folks want to create impact in the space of personal development. This is now going back all the way to 2004. And so many of these fine folks, like, they couldn't generate a client and maybe they had one or two clients. And it was so sad to me that really, really good people who worked really, really hard were never taught anywhere the most fundamental aspects of what we're chatting about. So yeah, this is how, in my humble opinion, to build any business. So yes.
That's exactly, that resonates with me because that's one of the reasons we started our company. So we specialize in paid Facebook and Instagram advertising and, building funnels and the sequencing and flowing of bringing people into a business from that. But that's what got me started at the very beginning because I was like, wow, like these people, a lot of people have amazing products or services. They have really cool things that they do and they can help people with. But if no one knows about it, it's going to disappear. You can't just open the doors to a new shop or open a new business and cross your fingers that someone's going to come and start working with you. You've got to somehow get yourself out there. So that really resonates with me there 100%.
So how did you get into your journey? I mean, it's beautiful and amazing. And how did that start for you?
So for me, it was, I was looking at and seeing other businesses. So on the opposite side of things, when I was younger, I didn't really, when people would say they want to be a policeman or a fireman and things like that. I was like, I wanted to be a businessman. That was just since I was a little kid. That was like my goal. It was like, I wanted to be a businessman. And when I saw what businesses were suffering from, I was like, cool, well, like I was 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old. And I'm like, cool. If people wanted what these people have and I can bring them those people, surely that's going to be good. And then I didn't realize that was what marketing was at the time. And I was like, cool, if I just bring people that want this, they buy it, then everyone's going to be happy. And that's when I started going down, looking at the different avenues of business when it was sales, marketing, management. And marketing kind of just clicked for me. I was like, cool, it kind of makes common sense to me. It's like, put something in front of people that they want, tell them how they get it, and then let them get it. And it's like, it was pretty straightforward to me. That kind of made sense. And that's why I always focus on that ever since then.
That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations. I know you're up to big things in the world. That's
No,
awesome.
appreciate it. For yourself, what do you think that people are missing in the realm of, and I want to get down into some of the, maybe a little bit more nitty gritty of some of the things that you've identified to for people to transition to, but when it comes to influence and things like that, which for some people can seem like a huge buzzword and like, I don't think I could ever influence someone. But what do you think it is that people, having worked with the number of people that you have now, missing in their, their makeup so that they're not doing that? Like, what is it that they don't have currently, or what could they add in that would really just, amplify their level of influence whether they're talking to individuals or large groups from stage?
Yeah, sure. So thank you. So Peter Drucker says that business is nothing more than marketing and innovation. That's it. And what I would add to that is there can be no marketing and innovation without language and human technology. And language gives rise to human technology. So if we can't define something, we can't measure it. And I think that the number one challenge people initially have about influence is they have no structure to do it. And if you're an athlete, if you're a builder, if you're a singer, if you're in a band, anything you do, you have a structure. Music you can write music. There are notes on a page. We don't have structures like that for influence. And so my life's work has been about writing the formula, the music for influence, and why it works. So I think there's 4 steps, there's 10 indispensable elements and 4 energies of influence. That's a lot more than we can chat about today. But the first, if somebody say to me, hey, so what's the first fundamental step? Like, where would you begin? I would say, yeah, have a formula. Second, I would say to love people unconditionally with boundaries. And I think the amplification and the exponentiality of influence, the math of it begins with loving people. And if we don't love people, it creates a different energetic dynamic where we give rise to people's fear and default no. And so we love people and we're integriously approaching things, not to pitch, not to hook, not to close, not to go get somebody, take something, right? Where we would be speaking about the people we do business with that we want to have say yes to us and become our clients the same way in front of them that we're talking about behind closed doors about them. The same way we communicate with people we love and care about, the same way we communicate with a stranger walking down the street that might be a street cleaner. Once we love people unconditionally and understand effective boundaries, we can then integriously approach sharing our value and having it received by others and move forward. So that's the first thing that I would fundamentally share with people.
And tell me a little bit what you mean about the boundary side of things.
Yeah, I think people get confused when we talk about heart-centeredness and influence. That's why I'm blinded. I have a lightning bolt on my hat. In 1969, my mom was pregnant with me and we were on the way to Woodstock. It was the summer of love. And a lot of folks went to Woodstock under a beautiful concept, like the song Imagine by John Lennon. Other folks went to San Francisco to go to Haight-Ashbury in the summer of love. And those people got there with such a beautiful intention of love and caring, and they had no structure. And soon it devolved into things that nobody really liked and wanted. And Woodstock was a beautiful festival, but complete mess. And Haight-Ashbury never even became a beautiful festival in San Francisco. Petty crime erupted, filled in the streets, total insanity. And so I think I'm certain it's a combination of heart-centeredness and love, which is the intention that was set behind, the summer of 1969, but also in organized structures that lead to the things that people want. So when I say love and heart-centeredness, I also mean the boundaries part. And the boundaries part is having affirmative agreements with people. It's like, yeah, we're going to go and I'm going to get the food and you're going to do this work and we're going to have an ecosystem merger and you're going to bring 10 different entities to our speaking engagement. And I'm going to bring 10 entities and I'm going to pay for this and you're going to pay for that. And this is what it's going to look like. So the boundaries are affirmative agreements between people, because I am quite confident as well that when folks don't have affirmative agreements, that is when we are in disagreement. We're not in disagreement when conflict begins. We're in disagreement as soon as we don't have an affirmative agreement together. So loving people unconditionally and then having affirmative agreements, this is how teams operate, professional sports teams. It's how high performing sales teams work. It's how every organizational construct exists, and it's optimized by the heart-centeredness.
I think that's a very, very important point there. And for everyone listening, I think it is everything you need to do has to have a form of structure. Like even as human beings, the way we're made up is made up of a structure. So it's like it needs to have something there. And sometimes even I liken it back to when we write ads for people. And at the end, sometimes we have a final sentence which says, it might say, click below to and insert whatever the goal is, to purchase, to learn more, to find out, to watch a video. And people go, I don't really know if I want to be that forward with people. And I was like, you're not being forward. You're giving them the structure of what there is to do next. Because otherwise, as you said, you could have the best marketing message out there, but if you don't put a final call to action, they don't know what to do yet. People inherently need structure. So I love the fact that you said that, because all about the structure and the process of things.
Yeah. And Kim, I couldn't agree more. And I am sure you have forgotten more than I will ever know about the space of digital advertising, which is an area of great intrigue for me as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I've made more mistakes than you could possibly make in business over time. I'm privileged that I think in the process of making mistakes, if we innovate effectively, we still get incredible outcomes, which I am blessed and thankful for. And I would say for everybody out there, it's like, yeah, just what you said, Kim, that the smallest deletions, dilutions, and distortions, like deletion meaning elimination of, dilution meaning like the weakening of, and distortion meaning the changing of, lead to no results. So you could give people the best advice in the world, which I'm confident you do, and the tiniest deletion of something, or the weakening of the messaging, or the shifting slightly, and they'll get no results. They'll be like, see, like this doesn't work. It's like, no, it's just left an ingredient out. If you're making a cake and you leave out the eggs, and this is the type of cake you're making, it's got to have eggs, you don't have a cake anymore. So yeah.
It's so true. As you mentioned the frameworks there, you said there's 10 components, 4 parts. And it's like, well, if someone tries to do part 4 before they've done part 1, I'm sure the same thing, you're not going to get the same outcome. So I wholeheartedly agree with you on those points there. Now, tell me a little bit more about what you're up to now, what you're focusing on. Because obviously I know influence is one part, but you mentioned so many other things. And I know I've been reading up a lot about you. What else have you got going on that might be beneficial for someone who's an entrepreneurial person, a business owner, to start even just thinking about in the concept of their business growing forward in, after obviously a pretty crazy year this year, going into next year? Is there anything that you're kind of seeing across the board when it comes to working with people and speaking to people, and you're like, this is probably an area that people should be putting more attention on?
Thank you for that, Kim. We've created something called the Real Raw. And as we entered, this period of COVID, I began to think about marketing. And I began to think about how valuable experiential marketing is. So, if you look at Tony Robbins, and he created the film, I'm Not Your Guru. And during I'm Not Your Guru, the most powerful part of what Tony does, for example, is he does magic tricks. And his magic tricks are when he does interventions with people. And so you are watching him give somebody an experience, an experiential marketing dynamic. So you're seeing him do what he does, not talking about what he can do. You're actually experiencing him do it. So in that vein, I thought about, hey, like, what do we do? And we created this Real Raw, which is where we put people on a show online, and we have them work on going from hello to yes. And then they receive feedback from judges, and I do some of those magic tricks of going from hello to yes with people and demonstrating the formula that we teach them, blended formula, 4 steps, 10 indispensable elements, and 4 energies. And this dynamic of experiential marketing, where we have 10 people going. It's sort of like, American Idol meets Harvard Business School, or maybe what Harvard Business School would be if they taught influence, right? And it's been mind-blowingly successful. And we've done about 125 episodes thus far, and we've had incredible people on. You're more than welcome to come on someday if you'd grace us with your presence, Kim. And yeah, it's been extraordinary, the outcome, because when people hear about a concept, it's one thing. When they become present to trying to do it themselves, they realize the gaps. It's like sitting there saying, hey, yeah, sure, I'm a pretty strong person, and getting in the weight room and, watching somebody bench press 300 pounds and then somebody bench press 140 pounds and be like, well, wow, there's a big gap between where I am and where I can be. And that's what we try to support people lovingly, empathetically, with fun. We laugh, we have a good time. It's sort of like, lunch or dinner with some really amazing people meets some gamification and learning. And it's been extraordinary. So I would say that's currently our biggest access. And we just came off our elite training weekend down here by my beach home. We were surfing in like pre-hurricane conditions and doing crazy things in the water, but we're also learning like crazy and going through these experiential dynamics as well. So I believe in experiential teaching and marketing at a very high level.
I love that. And I think that's such a great point. And yeah, I think a lot of people saw that documentary and even people in business, but they didn't really quite grasp, I think, the reason why he did it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, cool. So it told his story, got him out there. And it's like, if you, as you mentioned just there, and you broke down, it's like they're giving you the experience of potentially what you could expect and the differences that you can see in people before and after, rather than just saying, this is what I do, how I do it, trust me, believe me, that's how it works. And I'm pretty sure from memory, I had a couple of buddies, I think, that worked on some of the campaigns on the back end of that event. I think they sold out Date with Destiny for like the next 2 or 3 years straight away. They had to go and find bigger venues because people were like, oh, that's what Tony, like, that's what I can expect in an event. Where other times they're like, well, I know that he's the guy and he makes you walk on fire, but like, what does he actually do?
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, Kim, I've had the privilege of speaking on Tony's stage at 7 of the last 8 events, including Date with Destiny 2019, Date with Destiny 2018, Date with Destiny 2019. Imagine this. The Platinum Partnership Program is about $100,000 program, right? And after I had the privilege and honor of speaking, there were 120 plus Platinum partnerships signed up at that event. 120 people signing up for a program that costs $100,000 plus. And I am very confident that I am not your guru and that entire dynamic. In addition, of course, Tony's incredible genius, and I dare say with some humility, what I was able to bring, from my portion of sharing my experience and journey and story led to, all of that. And so the differential dynamics is, let's say there's no I'm not your guru. The crowd is smaller and there's a few other distinctions off. That number could easily be 40 people instead of 120. And the difference economically is mind-boggling. And so that's what I believe about the superpower of influence and how it stacks from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4, which I know is the space you live in, the math of each lever along the continuum that leads to completely different, like not just like, 50% more, but hundreds of percents more, thousands of percents more compounded over time.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, as you say, sometimes when you see just the difference, and it's only a small difference. I remember there was the story, I think it might have even been Tony that used to tell, I think it was about a plastic surgeon, and it was about the difference between someone who may be considered in the normal world ugly versus someone who was a supermodel was a 1 millimeter difference in several points on the face. And the same with a golf swing. It's like the difference between going purely straight ahead and slicing off into the bushes is about a 1 millimeter on a golf face. So it's the same when it comes to the business and the numbers. As you say, if you do that over 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 leverage points, it astronomically blows things up, which is amazing. As we get towards the end of our time here together, I always like to ask this question, which is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
I would definitely not say, it's been brilliant and wonderful, but one thing that would come to mind is like, why does any of this matter? We live in a space of money and time and energy. And so why should we really care? And would it be okay if I answered that question?
Please do, yeah.
I think it's because, we live in this amazingly complex world where we so often, are in our head and we're thinking about our fear, and it inhibits our actions just in slight ways, not always profound ways. And the difference is, this weekend I had the privilege of taking these fine folks into my grandparents' beach house. And I have, 2 here, and, their house is not far away. And my grandparents never made more than $25,000 in any year in their life. And when you walk into their house, there's this unbelievable wall of pictures. And so what they didn't have in money, they had in massive abundance of love. And their sacrifices created the space generationally for love and magic. And I think for all of us, it just comes down to that we all want to experience magic. We want to experience these moments that mean everything to us. And sometimes it's a win in business. And more often, though, it's what those wins create in terms of our time freedom to be there and be available. And the great thing I'm most grateful for in my life and the greatest success I had was walking my kids to grammar school and dropping them off at school every single day, to having them have played in 1,000 sporting events and have missed 9 total. And that's because I learned these principles at the age of 27. And I was privileged to become a business owner instead of operator. And it created that freedom to have magical moments. And so when people are thinking about the numbers and should I, shouldn't I, and the levers you can help them pull, Kim, humbly, I can help people pull. It's all about what it creates for us in terms of that magic and the legacy that we leave. And that's why I am completely confident that all this is achievable, yes, but imperative so we can have those magical moments.
I love that. I think that wraps it up very nicely. Now, for anyone that's been listening and they said, all right, I think I need to find out a bit more about what you're up to. Obviously, we can only give them so much in 30 minutes here. Where's the best place for people to connect online and find out more about what you guys are up to?
So 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, in the US, we run the Unblinded Huddle every morning. It's free. And there you can find out the things you need to know, unblindedhuddle.com. And we're looking to partner with people in running real raws in every profession imaginable. And so check us out and learn more. And it's really been an honor, Kim, to share with you for a little bit.
Absolute pleasure having you. I loved it. And I think I'm going to go back and listen to this after we all and take some more notes on the back end. So it was great. So guys, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please check out the show notes and we'll have links to everything so you can find out more about what's going on with Unblinded and what Sean's up to as well. So thank you again so much for joining us. Really appreciate you making the time.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate all you.